Sup snakes! In today's video, I have played, mapped, and calculated the distance you would need to travel to complete Fallout New Vegas for Caesar's Legion. I have once again put my master's degree in geospatial sciences to the test, and we have a result. So if you've ever wondered, can I replicate this game on foot? This is probably the video for you. I've done this before with the Yes Man ending of Fallout New Vegas, and you can check that out here. But without further ado, let's get into it.
So, how does one actually do this? Well, first you pull the game images into mapping software. In this case, I'm using ArcGIS Pro. And you do something called georeferencing. This is exactly what's done if you're doing professional GIS work. Oftentimes you'd get aerial or satellite photography, maybe even drone photography at this point, and you would compare the images to a base map. And it's pretty easy. Once you have that, you take things like the ridges found throughout Fallout New Vegas, and you would compare setting a point on the surface map versus the base map to get those ridges to line up as best you can. Because they used real USGS data, this makes this somewhat easy. New Vegas's map is a hill shade map, which just means it shows the shades of the hills in dark and light colors, the sun casting from one angle and the shadows on the other side. This is a common way to show relief in mapping software. Due to it being pretty accurate, it looks solid in my opinion. There's issues around the Colorado River where they expanded it, so you can't just jump across it. That would make the transformation a little more warped than we would want it to be for the purposes of this video. You can see I can change the transformation, which adjusts the map quite a bit to make it line up even better, but this is the perfect alignment, one for one. As you can see, it gets a little wonky around the Colorado River, mostly because they expanded it. So I just chose this transformation, which there is some stuff that's offset, especially around the edges of the map, but overall, it is pretty dang accurate to the underlying topography, as you can see here when I toggle the map on and off. Once the map is georeferenced, it becomes pretty easy to do the rest. You now have a base map to work off of, and you can go through and start adding in those lines to show the different segments of the road that you travel. For the purposes of my video, I used real locations of the different spots. For example, Nellis Air Force Base is up here in the game, whereas in real life, it's down here. So for the purposes of doing the journey in miles, I set the real locations where we know where they are closer to where they are in reality. That is why you'll see some shifting here. The game, because it is scaled, has to make stuff further apart, because when you scale something down, everything gets closer together. For the locations that aren't representative of real spots, I just used where they were approximately in game. For example, Hidden Valley, the shortcut over Black Mountain. These types of things aren't set in stone things in real life. They're based off of real areas, but they're not real spots. So we went off of the game for those. Now, having established the locations of the various points of interest we have to get to, I worked off of the real roads. You'll notice that the New Vegas map lines up pretty well with where the real roads are, but it's not exactly exact. So I worked off the real roads instead. This makes sense because we're trying to figure it out in real miles, but you'll notice that some of these aren't perfectly aligned with the New Vegas roads. Just know that that is referencing a real road underneath, not the slightly warped version of the game road. I figured the Courier would take roads because overall they are the safest routes when traveling. Remember, when you fast travel, you aren't just flying to a new location. Your character is traveling through space and time to get from point A to point B, and I figured they'd take the roads. Once I had that pretty good understanding of where the Courier needed to go, and I did that based off just doing a speed run myself, I started plotting these different segments. This is pretty easy. You just snap them to underlying features like roads in this example, and you just start plotting. As an example, this is what this process looks like. You would try and line up with either the surface map if you're going off of game locations, which in a lot of cases I did, or underlying maps to line up with roads. From here, I exported these maps into Google Earth. Why? It makes a lot more sense to do this in Google Earth, in my opinion. It's something we're all way more familiar with when you really think about it. Google Earth is something that you could go download right now to have a pretty clear understanding of where all everything is, and it's something that you can use. You can make plotted points like this in Google Earth, but it's not my day-to-day practice, and it's not as easy as it is, at least for me, where I can use the real commercial software to do this in a way that's a bit more efficient. But that said, you could do this kind of stuff in Google Earth, and that software is free as well. This isn't sponsored by Google or anything. It's just, I'm just telling you like it is. Google Earth is also something that's used quite a bit in industry. Now, I have done a lot with Google Earth. I've also mapped the locations of all the vaults from the Fallout TV show. We've seen that in other videos. And I've pulled in all the game maps as well that you can. Not all of them are accurate, like Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, for example. Again, I've covered this in shorts and in other videos, but I can go back over it again. If you want to, let me know in the comments. But today we're looking at New Vegas, so let's zoom in on New Vegas's map in Google Earth Pro. Looks pretty cool, right? From here, we can actually look at all of these segments. Now, this is something I could have done in the original software, but I chose not to do. Why? This, to me, makes a lot more sense because this is a software we are a little bit more familiar with as lay people using average software. And it has this cool feature of showing elevation profiles on these journeys that you take. So that's exactly what I'm using, and of course it gives you the distance. So let's talk about that distance traveled. So now that we have it in the software, we can see the profiles and distances. Let's talk about how far you actually traveled. Now, I'm going to show you two different ways. One is a true speed run, which is about what I can estimate this is here. And then I'm also going to show you the developer way, which is going to add a significant amount of mileage that wouldn't be represented necessarily otherwise. So first, let's do the true speed run, which means going north-ish from Good Springs. First of all, you will start off in Good Springs proper. You'll go from Good Springs to Jean, which is about right here. As you can see from the map, it's only slightly offset. This is that journey. So this is the first leg of our journey before we start heading north. And that, as you can see, is 6.87 miles. From there, you will take what I'm calling the shortcut, honestly. This goes up from Jean through Black Mountain, where you'd pick up the NCR armor and the revolver if you want to do a really fast speed run and start doing the revolver glitch where you jump ahead. This is the way you do it right here. So this is that journey. As you can see, you have a ton of elevation net gain and loss on this one as well. If you want to pay close attention during this video and map that as well, have at it. So as you can see, you would travel 27.6 miles. When you're at the trading post, it's definitely important to pick up Veronica. So from here, you're going to head up towards the strip. I kind of did basically where the strip is on the base map because, yeah, there's a little warping here involved. But overall, it's pretty accurate to where it is in game. And you would get the stuff you need to get done on the strip. So to get up to there, that's about 16 miles. Then once on the strip, I said that was about 2.76 miles. So let's look at the elevation profile. Here, you're kind of running up and down the strip, which in reality is pretty long, right? So we're going to count that mileage twice. I figure while you're at the strip, you will do all the things you need to do. You'll deal with Benny, you'll deal with possibly the White Glove Society, and you will, of course, deal with Mr. House. We're doing a speed run here, so may as well get it all done while you're there. From there, the strip, you will head down to the Brotherhood of Steel bunker. This just makes like the most sense to do it this way. For some reason, this mapping segment for me was a little messed up, so we are going to do another cool feature in this mapping software and kind of highlight just the region we need to travel. It's this. That is 34 miles. And this is times 2 because you need to head back up. Whoop, there you go. Now you're going there and back. Makes sense. Once back at the strip, you will head up to see the boomers. You'll deal with them however you see fit. Because it's a speed run, you don't need to be told by Caesar to do this, and you'll just head straight up. So that's 10.6 miles times 2, because you're also heading back down to the strip. That's where that extra strip distance comes into play, and from there, you're done on the strip. While you're at the strip, or heading through Freeside to get out, be sure to grab Arcade. You'll find out why later, but it is important for that speed run. So, to get to that connector, it's another 16 miles, as you can see from that elevation point. Now, I have this small segment here that I had to map from this shortcut to about where the connector with Boulder City is in game, and that's what I used here. If you're wondering why it's such a random short elevation or short distance, that's this. So going from there to there, it's about 5 miles. That's the last time you will head up in all of those different directions, Good Springs, the strip, everything. That's it, you're done. From here on out, it's a lot of going back and forth to and from the fort. It's a lot, guys. It's so much. So, from Boulder City to about Searchlight, that's this journey, you will go 34.3 miles. You're going to do that a few times here out. From Searchlight to the fort, this is the greatest distance, and some distance where, in theory, you're not actually walking, but maybe helping paddle, or, I don't know, even swimming. I doubt it. But you're going to head up the Colorado River. We're still counting the distance, and that's 67 miles. While you're up at the fort, you're going to deal with the bunker underneath the fort and the stuff that Caesar is asking you to do. Then, the last thing you're going to need to do is head back down and out. So that's another 67 miles, and then you're going to head another 34.3 miles to Boulder City. We did this earlier, that's why I know the distance. And then from Boulder City to the dam, you're going to do what you're going to do with President Kimball. You might actually fail this quest. It doesn't matter, you still need to go up there. And that is approximately 11.4 miles. Then you'll head the 11.4 miles right back, right down the 34.3 miles, and then up the 67 miles back to the dam, or back to the fort. Once at the fort, you're done traveling that gigantic distance. You don't need to do it anymore because, well, you're at the last portion of the game. And instead of taking the whole long journey that you need to take back to Cottonwood Cove to and from, you're going to go directly to the dam because it's the final battle. And that's this journey here. Huge elevation gain and loss as well. Makes sense, you're going into the dam. And that is about 25.8 miles. And that's it. Once you're at the dam, that's the end of the game, and that is the entire run. So that is a true speed run, and before we calculate the actual distance, let's talk about the developer speed run, I like to call it, which is, honestly, it's pretty similar. You just add one extra little distance here, and that's that. The rest, you still have to do the exact same way, which, in my opinion, makes sense. So let's take a look at that. So in my opinion, the developers want you to go the long way down, back through California, up and through the whole long way at least once. Of course, if you're doing a speed run, you wouldn't do that, but I do think it's interesting to say, okay, let's do it once the long way. Once you have that long way done, you don't need to do it again, obviously, but let's add that extra couple of values in here to figure out the difference between a true speed run and what I'm calling the developer route. Then from Searchlight to Boulder City, we have 34.3 miles. This is an add-on to the distance that we travel here to there anyway from the game, just getting to Cottonwood Cove and back and going up the river. From about Boulder City to the strip itself, we have an additional 20 miles, 20.9 miles. Then the rest of it should be exactly, in theory, the same as the other calculation. Those first three values are quite a bit different. And we'll do the math and tell you both journeys in a second here. So, 50.47 miles is the speedrun's initial journey to get all the way to the strip. Versus doing the developer desired route, that's 117 miles, 0.8. It's a significant distance that you save doing a speed run instead of the developer's run. So, to go a true speed run, it's 500 in 18 miles, 0.53. That is crazy. And to do that extra long developer speed run, it is 585.86 miles, which is another significant distance. And those are the 2 speed runs that you can do. And wow, I gotta say, that's a lot of walking. But if you want to replicate this at scale, you would divide it by 25, and then you're just going the distance the courier actually traveled. So, for a true speed run, you divide that by 25, that would be about 20 miles. Not bad. Not bad at all. And for the developer speedrun, as I'm calling it, you divide that one by 25, and that would be 23 miles. So it's not really that big of a difference when you look at it as the distance the courier is actually traveling, but if you're replicating the actual mileage, boy, get your good walking shoes.
Well, there you have it, people. You now know how long you would have to walk and boat to complete Fallout New Vegas for Caesar's Legion. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out my other mapping videos and all my social medias. Stay safe in the wasteland. Peace.